Hi, this is Zachary Ring from Thea Enterprises. Today I'm going to talk about an extremely useful function within the HomeWorks Designer software. Today I'm going to show you how to program an automatic sequence. Like manual sequences, automatic sequences contain a series of steps defined by the programmer. Unlike the manual sequence, we typically will advance through these steps after a certain amount of time has expired, like in the example shown here. A typical example for an automatic sequence is creating an exhaust fan timer. Notice, step 1 turns our exhaust fan on, then we automatically go to the next step after 10 minutes, and then the next step will turn the exhaust fan off. We can create something very similar to the example I showed you in our manual sequence video and cycle through several saturated colors. Instead of advancing through these colors with a button press, here we move to the next step after 15 seconds. We can actually use these strictly as timers when we start working with variables and conditional programming. Here I have an example where I use a keypad button press to start a sequence that disables my garage sensor for 8 hours. Pressing the button starts the sequence, which sets the sensor state to disabled. Then, in case I forget to re-enable the sensor manually, we move to the next step after 8 hours, which sets that variable state to sensor enabled. I'll cover this example in detail in a later video, but today we're going to keep it simple and we're just going to go over the exhaust fan example. To create an automatic sequence, start by navigating to Program Sequences. Then, click Add Sequence, found in the lower left-hand corner of your screen. Then, name your sequence. I'm just going to name ours Exhaust Fan Example 1. You'll probably want to get a little more specific with your name because these sequences are not global and they point to a specific load within the system. In the typical HomeWorks home, you'll have multiple exhaust fans throughout the house. Start by naming the sequence steps. If you need to add additional steps, click the plus icon. On my fan on step, I'm obviously going to turn the exhaust fan on. Note that the exhaust fan is found under lighting loads and not under fans. Multi-speed ceiling fans are located under fans, but switched loads like exhaust fans are found under lighting zones. This is our timer function. If I want my exhaust fan to run for 15 minutes, I'll put to automatically go to the next step after 15 minutes. One thing I really like about sequences is that it gives us the ability to set an LED logic for each step. I'm going to set the LED to blink while the fan is running to let the user know that a timer is in motion. Then navigate to your fan off step and switch the load to off. I'm going to deselect the automatically go to option and I'm going to set my status LED to off. The last step is to set what is going to stop this sequence. Here, I want to stop the sequence after one loop. There are other examples, like the color change example, where you might want this to continuously loop for a set period of time. We still have to program a button press action to start this sequence, but our actual sequence is complete at this point. The reason I named this example 1 is because there's actually another way that we can program this same sequence. Click Add Sequence. I'm still going to create a fan on step that turns my fan on. I'm going to remove this option here because I'm not going to create any additional steps using the plus icon, but I am still going to set my status LED to blink. Then I'm going to utilize the built-in stop step to stop my sequence after 15 minutes. And I need to make sure I put the off action on the stop step. While these two sequences look different, they will lead to the same end result. Next, I'm going to assign the sequence to a button press, and I'll do that by navigating to Program Devices. Once we're in Program Devices, navigate to the button that you want to attach the exhaust fan to. Now, we don't want to select the exhaust fan here. We want to navigate to the sequence that we just created. I'm going to start with exhaust fan example 1. Remember, this is the example with the two defined steps, fan on and fan off. I select this, and I want to make sure to use the sequence start/next option. Then it's important to change my button type to single action because I want the first step to start my sequence. If I walk away and don't touch anything, 15 minutes later, it'll automatically move to the fan off step, turning the fan off. If I turn the fan on and I want to manually turn the fan off, a second button press will take me to the next step, which also turns the fan off. The last thing I want to do is change my LED logic to define by sequence. That will allow me to utilize that blink functionality that lets the user know that a timer is running. If I want to use exhaust fan example 2, I want to do something slightly different. Because we don't have two defined steps and we're relying on that stop step to turn the fan off, I actually want to change my button type to toggle. I'll use define by sequence again, and then here I want the press on action always to take me to the first step of the sequence, which is fan on. Then I want my off press to actually stop the sequence. So if we think through how this works, I turn on the fan, I walk away, 15 minutes later, the sequence stops because we said stop after 15 minutes. And remember, the stop action turns the fan off. If I turn the fan on and then I want to manually turn it off, a second press will take me to my off level, which stops the sequence, which turns the fan off. Before I wrap up the video, there's just one last sequence setting I'd like to explain. I'll navigate back to define sequences, and it's this tracking function here. Throughout HomeWorks, you'll find these question marks, and you can simply click on the question mark, and it will do its best to explain the function. When tracking, if the programming of a step matches the actual levels, the sequence automatically skips to that step. What that means is if I start the sequence with one button and the sequence is running, then use another button or the app to set this pendant to blue, the sequence will jump to that step and then advance to purple, pink, so on and so forth. If tracking is disabled and I have a sequence running and the last step was red, even if I set the pendant to blue, the sequence will continue on where it left off and it'll advance to the green step. Depending on your application, you may or may not want to utilize this function. That's all I have for automatic sequences today. As I mentioned earlier, there will be future videos that reference or use this functionality, like the garage sensor disable. Keep an eye out for that video and many more to come in the future. Once again, my name is Zachary Ring. Thanks for watching.